So hello everybody and welcome back. That Hans is with us already and I think we're still, hi Hans, how you doing?
Hello, still good?
Good. I think we're still waiting for Kezius to come and join us, but we have lots of people already who are requesting to bring themselves up onto the screen. So let's try and bring a few of us up whilst we're waiting for Kezius, and we can get people's thoughts and things from the start. So I'm just going to maybe try and bring. We have Leith here. Hi Leith, how are you doing?
Hello Dan, how are you?
Good, very good, thank you, very good. So we're going to try and bring Kezius up as well to be with you for now. But Hans, if I can pass over to yourself, maybe to we have Leith and we have Ross here as well. Hi Ross. So over to you, Hans. We'll try and bring Kezius up too, and then we have lots more people waiting in the queue. So so yeah, we can get going with some people's thoughts.
Thank you, Dan. First of all, maybe just a minute of my own thoughts. First, we had some really interesting discussions over the past 2 days. There's been a lot of focus, obviously, on the results of WRC 19 and how fruitful the cooperation has been between the African nations. However, one thing that really resonated with me was what Mario Maniewicz said in his keynote. He mentioned that only 28% of Africans have access to the internet. So we as an industry clearly need to do better. We're not short of ideas as the showcase on dynamic spectrum access highlighted yesterday. However, all of this requires government support. And I'm really looking forward to the section on how to close the digital divide tomorrow. Now, I'd like to bring in a couple of speakers that we have lined up already. We have Leith Hamad from the ESOA. So Leith, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let me first start by thanking Dan and the event organizer team, and of course all distinguished presenters for this very useful and constructive discussions yesterday and today. So it was a great presentations and deliberations on the WRC 23 agenda items today, as well as, of course, the C-band. To be honest, I'm pleased that both the satellite and mobile industry are keen to empower African connectivity, whether after all it is a 5G or another technology or satellite technology. So I believe no one technology can bridge the digital divide. So nowhere in the world, not only Africa. So a mix of technologies from mobile to fixed, terrestrial and satellites, all should play a vital role in connectivity, and it should all be enabled, of course, to provide connectivity everywhere and to help the digital society transformation in the near future. So thank you for having me, and thank you for all these presentations. I'm looking forward to continue the discussions tomorrow as well.
Thank you, Leith. Now moving on to Ross Patterson from the GSMA.
Hi, Hans, and thank you for running a very good panel on C-band just now. Much appreciated. And I'll just pick up quickly on the point you made. Yeah. GSMA, we're expecting quite a lot of growth in mobile broadband connectivity in Africa over the next 5 years or so. And it is driven by the lower cost of LTE devices. And we're going from about 30% at the moment to about 60% in 2025. And we'll really only be talking about 5G in Africa. That's not what we're talking in the next few years, but that only really going to take up in the second half of the decade. All driven by LTE, we're getting cheaper now, the cheapest technology. But I wanted to come on today to talk about the agenda item 1.3 piece. I think the really important thing, the panel was great, and I think all these things are so important, but in many ways they're quite a long way off into the future. What we're doing at this WRC is having already protected above 3.8 in region 1 for only satellite use, which is unique amongst the ITU's 3 regions in the world. Asia and the Americas obviously already have a mobile allocation in the whole band up to 4.2. We're talking about a mobile allocation, the softest of the regulatory instruments available to us, and the ability to use it mobile. We hear a lot from SEBI about finding the best solutions, giving people the options they need. right now, that option doesn't exist in if you're going to adhere to the ITU's radio regulation. And so this mobile allocation will give the choice. It doesn't make anybody move who doesn't want to. And any existing services will obviously have to have their coexistence assured. But the mobile allocation, those countries want to move into mobile for the 3.6 to 3.8 band, the option for doing so. It doesn't have to be scary. It is a good solution to allow people to move at different times. In terms of what Jérôme said about needing to move together in terms of harmonization, that is true also, but this will all be done under the 5G NR band 78, which covers the whole band 3.3 to 3.8. And so this mobile allocation has options for people to move when they want and use what they want when they want. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross. I have a quick follow-up question on this. I mean, based on what you're suggesting, it sounds like we could end up with a situation where different countries do different things and end up with satellite in sort of the same subband as another, whereas in another country that's used for mobile. Do you see any sort of coordination issues there, particularly at the border, and how do you think we resolve?
Sure. I mean, that's 100% normal. Not everyone moves at the same time. If you look at a map of Europe at the moment, which has had this harmonized for quite a few years now, different countries are moving at different paces. We've also seen the ASMG decision last year or the year before to use up to 3.8 for within the boundaries of the ASMG, making a kind of EU-type decision in the Arab region. And that's with UAE and Iran, which is a heavy satellite C-band user, being 200 kilometers apart across the Arabian Gulf. So yeah, there will be instances when some coordination is necessary, but in all honesty, the ASMG decision was made in the full knowledge of this happening. How many large African cities are right on the border? Well, there are some, and that's certainly the case, but the vast majority will be able to use it very happily without worrying about cross-border interference as well. So yeah, there's some circumstances will need to be dealt with as and when they emerge, but in general terms, this will be something that we can minimize through coordination.
Thank you, Ross. Let's move on to Ben Barr from the ITU. Ben, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. It's good afternoon to everyone, and good morning to those starting the day. The presentation and discussion were very interesting yesterday and today. I saw very interesting question going on the chat also. What I want to address in this 2 minutes is about the regulatory framework of the band 3.6, 3.8 gigahertz, particularly for Africa in the Radio X. As you know, this band is allocated to mobile service as secondary basis in Region 1, particularly in Africa. And this means that currently any application in the mobile service, including IMT, shall not cause interference or crime protection from the primary fixed and fixed satellite services. Then there is no specific technical condition for using this band in Region 1. But for using for mobile this band, maybe we need technical measure protect band and adjacent bands, in particular FSS Earth station above 3.8 gigahertz. Also, the upgrade of the mobile service in Region 1 is subject to studies to upgrade the status of the allocation, which is agenda item 1.3 of next conference. And also there are studies under agenda item 1.2 for the possible identification of this band for IMT. As we all agree, everybody wants harmonization, but everybody wants the harmonization to be perform in his own way or benefit. What I would encourage the administration participants is to participate actively in studies that will be carried out in Working Party 5D for Agenda Item 1.2 and Working Party 5A for Agenda Item 1.3. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benba. And my co-moderator, Casillas Mara, is here as well. Casillas, would you like to say a few words and then potentially take over?
Well, I'm having a field day actually, because certainly this is yet again a very diverse issue. Even at the WRC 19, even prior, it's been very clear that within ourselves as the African region, we are extremely divided on this. Extremely divided, and it was very interesting to listen to both parties for and against. Now, amongst the panelists, Dr. Gwangu had a say yesterday, though it was on the WRC 19. So let's go to Sarah and take. What is the thinking of YACO? What is the thinking of YACO? We know it's quite too early, but within YACO, are you giving this a thought, even at an informal level? Sarah?
Sorry, can I just jump in just before we pass to Sarah? Could I just ask for everyone on the screen, if you're not talking, could I ask you to mute your microphone and then unmute it when you're asked a question, because there's a bit of background noise. So that would be great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Apologies to interrupt. So Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Cassius. Are you talking in line of the C-band?
Yes, 100%. Yes. And this is not the C-band. This is 3.6 to 3.8. Because 3.4, 3.6 is settled. Wow, to me, it's quite clear that 3.842 is completely a no-go area. So that's the range that is discussable, which is 3.6 to 3.8.
I think for us at YACO, what we probably want to start with is to take stock. What is the current situation on ground? What is it we're talking about? What is on ground? And this will help us speak to where is it that we are going. Yeah. So I think the first thing is let us take stock on where we are and also articulate on what is our problem and what are we trying to solve. And that will speak to the direction we should take as a region. Yeah. I think those are my remarks.
If I may just jump in, am I allowed to speak?
Sure, has.
So just one point to a couple of points to highlight. So, and I agree with what Sarah said, that you have to take stock of what's going on. First of all, I think we need to recognize that there's about 50 C-band satellites that cover Africa in one way or another. 50. Okay. So those are our satellites that are currently in service. The second point, which is the availability of the 3.4 to 3.6 gigahertz band, and that this needs to be cleaned up first before we start creeping up on the other spectrum. The third point is that the economics of deployment for the mobile operators. Again, when you take stock of the current status of the mobile networks in Africa, right, and the economics of deployment, how are they making money? Is throwing more spectrum, 200 megahertz, in a band that is going to require densification, is going to solve the issues, or is it more about trying to put some policies in place to enable connectivity? I mean, I think throwing more spectrum is not the solution to the problem. You know, I mean, the mobile industry can talk all day long about, yes, we need 100 megahertz per operator. Yes, in theory, yes, and probably even 200 megahertz is better than 100 megahertz. But you know, who are you going to take it away from? You know, where is that, and what does that really do? And are you really going to provide border-to-border coverage? Are you going to reach out to every village and provide C-band, mid-band spectrum 5G, and provide 5G in mid-band spectrum in every little village in the country? You know, so meanwhile, taken away from one side. Yes, go ahead, please.
Can I now make a comment? Is that okay to do?
Well, I hope you'll be the last one because
I haven't spoken. I've been raising my hands from the beginning. I think I've been very polite, and people came after me and still had a room to speak. Can I make my own comment now? Is that okay?
Yes, go ahead, Doctor. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Thank you very much. Well, the comment I just had, actually, we've had them through the discussion, the main discussion. As some of you might remember, we made a proposal at the meeting of Africa to pursue this. S3668, it came from us. There's a good reason for that. We have looked at, first, if we look at from a harmonization point of view, we look at all those in Region 1 and where they are today and what they're heading towards. We find that we are basically excluding ourselves from that benefit of harmonization. That is one. Second, yes, there's this issue of not making enough spectrum in that band available for 5G in our countries. It's already fragmented. That's actually the truth. I mean, we have fragmentation in that band right from 3.4 all the way to 3.6. I think in the course of the presentation, someone have shown even Nigeria's case and how it was distributed. I think one of the slides showed that in the last 1 hour presentation. Now, we had consistently been arguing that, let's not forget, in 2007, when the whole of this debate started, I was probably the #1 proponent of no change in that conference, in this plan. No one has voted more than me, in 2007. And after we came back, we started deploying fiber, international fiber to our countries. We made licenses available. So the situation improved significantly from that time. And that our requirement to be, or our dependence on the C-band became less. Now, yes, we're not saying that we don't depend on it. That's when the proposal, there's still 400 megahertz, 400, I keep your system, 400 megahertz still reserved. That is our intention, from 3.8 to 4.2, still reserved for satellite exclusively. Let's not forget that, there's that 400. And all the noise, like I said, I have made investigation in the use of the band by civil aviation. And like I said, it's just 3 point something megahertz they're using. And they were actually on the 4 gig before. They keep migrating from one point to another. They can migrate back, and that will solve the problem. Like rain has ceased. There will be no issue to debate if they move back. I mean, we still have, and we're still proposing to maintain 400 megahertz for that C-band, and that will still cater for the current need, I believe. But let's also not rush to conclusion that we have already established the current need, because there's an ongoing study, or the study is going to start to establish the current need and the current, just like Sarah mentioned. I think we don't need to jump down. The study will bring that out. But if like from the rule of thumb, thinking aloud, I think that it's a good case to say we can now make 200 megahertz, that's from 3.6 to 3.8 available for other services, and the remaining 400 for 3.8 to 4.2, unlike other regions. Other regions are saying give all of it. But where I say no, maintain the 400 for satellite, but the remaining 200 here, let's find a way of coexisting for the two services to use it wherever it's possible. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And to say that we continue to, because we depend on satellite, I mean, this COVID has shown that we can't depend on satellite perpetually, because if you're in village, you can't communicate with satellite.
Okay, I think we've lost Bashir here. There's a lot of people patiently waiting to give us their views. Let's just move on for now and potentially bring back Bashir later. So Julius Akpelu, your views on the past 2 days.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have our say. Quite frankly, it's been impressive talking about a lot of information to digest. My concern really has to do with bridging the digital divide, that's covering rural Africa. I have personally been involved in a couple of suggestions to some companies that were into that to help in covering rural Ghana. But the issue with fixed satellite service, space to air, coexisting with mobile, I think in an earlier presentation, it was mentioned that an early study shows that it is feasible in rural areas, but not the case in urban areas. Even to that, I can say it's just a matter of time before rural becomes urban. So that has to do with that brings on board a question of sustainability. And then I think, as mentioned earlier to the harmonizing the band, I think that should be the way forward. Kezia's mentioned quite shortly a short while ago that in Africa there is a lot of division regarding that, and I think it's about time we put things together so we can have a very well harmonized band, so that some of these issues, at least harmonizing the band, will also deal with interference, a little bit, even as further studies seek to prove how we can make both services coexist in the band. And to add the last one, the issue, the topic of hubs is actually one area I have been looking at with keen interest. But again, in my mind, I have questions about the economic viability of that in terms of using it to cover rural areas where population may not be so big. How viable is that going to be? And in the shortest possible time, how is that going to help in providing connectivity to rural Africa? Those are the few issues I have in mind, and I think along the line we will soon get answers to those questions. I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Julius. We have an excellent session tomorrow on exactly that topic, so stay tuned for that. Now, let's move on to Sergen Kadiashi. If I got your name wrong, but yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hans and team, and perhaps a good thank you to the panelists. I thought it was a very robust and very interesting discussion. I think Cassius hit the nail on the head, saying that this has long been a very sensitive topic. And as a mobile operator operating not only in Africa but across vast parts of Europe, as you know, we are part of the Vodafone group. We have a lot of experience in terms of some of the challenges we have in actually ensuring that we can get people connected, okay? And I think what's first and foremost important to say is we do not believe that there is a silver bullet in that one solution will actually suffice to connect absolutely everybody on the planet. And for that reason, you would read that we are exploring various different solutions. HAPS is one of them. We're busy with an exercise in Mozambique at the moment to test the Loon solution, which is quite a recent announcement. And we're also looking at new satellite technologies to provide access to communities and people that are out of the natural reach of normal land-based networks. But having said that, we generally as an operator work out the best balance for where there's sustainability for us to provide services, the type of users and the type of bandwidth and latencies or quality of service that users are demanding. And to be frank, satellite still remains short in a number of areas. Affordability of devices, costs, latency, and a number of things still prevail. And you will find that we have a vast higher demand for the normal terrestrial mobile network. And it brings me to a very important point that was discussed earlier on. And I just want to touch on the fact that harmonization is a material factor for us in Africa. And the reason for that is harmonization brings about affordability of devices. An interesting stat is if you look at the GSMA's 2019 Mobile Internet Connectivity Report, you'll find that over 3 billion people are actually in the coverage of a mobile network, but are not connected. And the fundamental reason for that is because devices remain out of the reach of affordability. So we must not underestimate what an impact this makes. And it brings me to is the 36 to 3800 is fundamental. And that is because of the slides that you would have seen earlier on that speaks about the largest developing 5G ecosystem in the band that is N78 and includes a segment of 36 to 3800. What we are saying as a mobile operator is that you cannot compare as a substitute creating a new ecosystem when you can dovetail with a global ecosystem that will give you far grander economies of scales, which will drive the affordability of devices and enable us as a society to put devices into people's hands. And that get them connected into what we're looking for is a broadband connection, not a narrowband connection with high latency, but a connection that will give them access to next generation services and applications. And those are the key things that we're looking at. And we're also looking at the fact that if it's a naturally and standard service, it makes it easier for us to put people on the network. So these are all material considerations. And the other thing is that we also need to consider that African demographics are particularly different. We have far more mobile operators, which means far more licensees, far more fragmentation of the spectrum. And I saw a lot of debate around the 100 megahertz and the 80 megahertz. And as an operator, we would want to deploy 5G in the largest spectrum block for the simple reason that we want to differentiate the service offering and the applications you can do on 5G versus that you could do on 4G. And if you look at the physical layer between 4G and 5G, there's not much of a difference. The reality is the underlying difference is throwing more bandwidth on the channel. And in order to do that, we would like to do that with the best performance possible so that 5G is a fundamentally differentiated service from 4G. And that doesn't mean that 4G is going to go away either, because 4G continues to prevail because customers and subscribers in Africa continue to still own 4G devices. So 4G will continue to prevail. And this brings in the discussion where we debate about refarming. When you refarm 2600 that has a strong 4G ecosystem and a strong customer base that is still relying on it, it means you take away that service to replace it with 5G, which only a fragment of people own devices for, and only a fragment of people are ready for. So it is a natural attrition that has to happen. And actually, these technologies tend to coexist in Africa. We still have 2G prevailing up to this very day. Not that we choose to keep it there, but because these are the customers that have devices that continue to use the service. So these are all a holistic number of things that one has to consider. And Bashir mentioned something very important, is that as an operator, while we are supportive of the fact that it comes back to my point of no silver bullet, is that we're only talking about 200 megahertz in the C-band. It's not the C-band. The C-band is actually everything in the band from 33 to 4200. We're saying we still need satellite there. And we believe satellite has a vital role to be played, but it will play in the top part of the segment, 38 to 4200, where we will still have an opportunity to leverage the 5G benefits, the ecosystem, the applications, and the economic value that will be gained out of it. And just one more point I want to make is that, quite frankly, mobile operators fundamentally participate in a number of spectrum auctions. And the reason why we do that is because we're willing to put money against the spectrum because we value it. And we will not pay for spectrum if we're not going to use it. So there's a lot of speak of, well, you're going to throw spectrum to the mobile industry and they're not going to use it. And that's just fundamentally not true, because we only buy spectrum that we're willing to put an investment against, that we're willing to bring up society with it, we're willing to connect people, and we want to uplift the communities that are unconnected and that are connected and want to use different and more advanced technologies. So just some comments from my side to try and alleviate some of the concerns that were discussed earlier on.
Thank you, Sharon. You make some really good points. I think the one on harmonization is really critical.
Just conclude what I started.
Yeah. Can I just finish? So 5G, people always think that it's super expensive, but then you look at what's going on in China, and get 5G devices for $125 out in the market. And so we're not talking about 5G being expensive. 5G is actually there's an opportunity there to make cheap devices available and bring them to market. Sorry, yeah, interrupted you, Kezia.
Yes. So
thank you.
Okay. Yes. So, Dr. Gwandu, just one moment. You come back. But for now, let's hear from Ethan.
Yes, thank you.
Besides what you are prepared for, and I hope you can either note this, because I really want you to answer these questions. 3.4, 3.6 went. Now people are discussing 3.6, 3.8. Much of the world has moved on that already. So the very first question is, we know you are worried, but how worried are you that WRC-20 will take 3.6, 3.8 away from you? And then at this point, even at this point, well before WRC-23, you are a satellite operator. Can you tell us whether or not you would invest tomorrow between 3.6, 3.8? I think so. So besides what you wanted to say, please carry on to how worried are you, and then because we can have a picture from there and so forth. So welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you all for letting me have this opportunity to speak. I know we don't have much time, so I'll just get right to the point. First of all, I wasn't planning to go into the general debate in any detail, but I did want to make a couple of comments which just came up in the last from the last speaker. I think we're looking at connectivity. We're looking at bringing connectivity to the citizens of the planet, to the citizens of the region, the digital divide. I mean, I don't want to go into like petty discussions, but I don't think that whether or not one industry can make a market, the distinction between their to say that, well, we need more spectrum because otherwise people might not realize how much better 5G is than 4G. I find 4G to be very, very good. And if I ever have 4G, which I don't always have in Europe, I do consider myself to be very, very well connected. I don't need necessarily as a basic need to have a differentiation shown to me as to how much better 5G, but that's another question. I also don't think that we're complaining that people who pay for spectrum are paying money for something that they don't plan to use. That never is never one of our considerations. The question is that policy decisions can dictate how spectrum will be used or not used generally. That's the issue. So I wanted to go back just before I answered Kezius's two questions, one of which will be partially answered by what I'm about to say, to look at the two, I call them Mythbusters, which I mentioned earlier in the chat, but the chat was so dense, I'm not sure if anybody really had a chance to read everything on the chat. And there's things which are not even just for C-band, but for generally competing technologies in general and satellite in general. We heard a number of times, and it gets repeated over and over again, that, well, why don't we put 5G in populated areas and we can put the satellite out in the rural, or I would say the non-populated areas. And I just wanted to emphasize that doesn't actually work as a solution for sharing, because all of what logic and all of the experience that we've had over many decades of providing services, both older and newer services, they consistently show that even satellite services, as you might expect, do also require customers in populate areas. And without actual customers in populated areas, you won't have a return on your investment, you won't have an industry. I think that should be fairly clear. It's not a justification to make a spectrum decision, because you don't make a spectrum decision on the basis of supporting or not supporting one industry for its own needs. Nor is it even possible. In the case of video distribution, you need to distribute videos to cable headends and to broadcasting centers which are in populated regions. Otherwise, you wouldn't need that infrastructure. Civil aviation, airports aren't in rural areas typically; they're in suburban areas. Emergency communications are everywhere. So it's not a workable solution. You can't simply say it's too easy. You can't really say, oh well, just put satellite where there are no people. It just simply doesn't work for many reasons. And the second myth I wanted to talk about, and that more directly addresses the question that Kezius was asking, and that is, let's have give each country the freedom to decide how to use a spectrum. Now, what I would say that for a supranational, I'm getting ahead of myself, a supranational industry such as satellite, where satellite doesn't respect country borders, and it requires a large regional footprint to justify the planning of its beams. You need a stable regulatory environment, at least in the region where your services or beams are going to operate, in order to attract investment for such an industry. So if you don't have even regional harmonization, you're not going to have an incentive for investment in satellite, and so you won't have a choice. So I know many people have said during this session as well, emphasize the need for harmonization, at least at a regional level, but it also goes into the issue of well, if you give everyone every individual country the absolute right to decide on their own, then you won't have that environment. You won't have a choice. So that goes to answer Kezius' question. Will we continue to invest in 3 to 3.8? The answer is, if there's a market and we can convince our investors, our boards, that yes, the environment, the harmonization of the band is such that we can see a foreseeable market for the life of the satellite, in which we would require to have a return on investment, which is, I mean, it is more than just a few years, as you know. Then yes, we will. If on the other hand the decision is that no, there's 3.6 or 3.8 is identified. I know it's not exactly on the agenda for this conference, but at least the first steps. Then I don't see how we can promise to be able to invest if we don't have a market. So how worried are we about losing that band? Well, I mean, I don't think it's really a question for the African administrations and the African region to decide what's the best use of the service of the frequency, what meets the needs, and the industry is there to respond accordingly. And I will say that what I've just said now isn't just about C-band; it's also about other bands which have been the subject of past conferences and maybe not even the subject of conferences. We have the same issues. We need to have some sort of a stability and identified need for services, and then we will be able to provide services which we think go a long way to addressing communication and connectivity needs. So I hope that answers your question, Kezius. Sorry to take a bit.
No, I'm quite surprised. I'm very surprised, especially on the investment bit, because really I was hoping that you would say you defer all kinds and manner of investments until the picture becomes clearer. But to me, that's quite comforting that you will still continue to invest in that range. Now, before we run out of time, allow us to bring in Mr. Daniel Obam. So, Mr. Daniel Obam, you have a clean slate. You can speak as Mr. Daniel Obam. You can speak on behalf of Kenya. You can speak on behalf of comment as you wish. on C-band and the other topics that we had. So please welcome. Let's seek your wisdom on this one and the other thing.
First, I hope we are still talking.
I think we lost him.
Yes, your line is quite poor, Mr. Obama. So you may comment on anything coexistence.
I think it's gone.
I mean, we just want to. It's gone.
I think we've
Okay,
lost
so
him.
Dr. Gwandu, you had
It's
something,
gone. So
something pending. Yeah, let's hear you.
I was just yes. What I was saying earlier was that for like Shajan mentioned, we are only taking a part. We are trying to use part of the spectrum, not the whole lot. You know, and the fact that we're looking to the two services to benefit from the spectrum, I think it is not something that should be of. I mean, the benefit is for the industry generally. I think when situations change, we can't say we remain the same. I can remember in those days when I was a student in England, to be able to talk to me, my relation have to travel like 20 kilometers to go and wait for dial tone to be able to talk to me. Now, you can't say just because they got 2G mobile, and they're able to talk to me from the 2G mobile, and everything is okay, then everybody should be happy and that's enough. No. I'm saying that we should be able to harmonize with the rest of the world. There is progress, that benefit should still come to the people. If you look at Europe, Arab, then you look at Africa, only Africa is lagging behind on that harmonization, and the benefit of harmonization has been well elaborated over the course of this last 2 days. I mean, we can't overemphasize the benefit of harmonization because costs become down. Now, yes, we have 50 satellites over Africa. I agree with that. But those 50 satellites can still share the spectrum in this band with other services where practical. And that's what we are saying. On the 200, the 400 can be dedicated, but the 200, I think we should look to the possibility of using it for other services. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
On that note, no. Let's at least let Caesar say something because we are told time is up. So Caesar, please say something. Yeah.
Yeah, Caesar has been waiting quite patiently here. So.
I think you are on mute. You may be on mute. You may be on mute. Try to unmute yourself. Can you hear me? I cannot hear you at least.
Maybe Cesar, maybe if you're not on mute, if you try refreshing your screen, that might work. And maybe we can go to either Ben or Haz, and then Cesar hopefully can come back in.
At least Mr. Hazem has something pending. So please go ahead.
So just real quick on the issue of introducing mobile in 3.4 to 3.8. I understand what Bashir was saying, but however, you need to remember you can't just simply introduce it next to satellite and not expect to have problems. Again, we're speaking from first-hand experience right now in the US in terms of what you need to do when you put 5G next to FSS. You know, putting 5G next to FSS is just not a matter of partitioning. You are on this side and the FSS on this side, and that's the end of it. There's all sorts of technical issues that you have to deal with. And unless you have an accurate picture of the C-band landscape, you can't just simply introduce it and not.
Caesar, you have 10 seconds. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. So just very quickly, let me say a word about the issue of affordability of terminals. So I think it's quite an interesting question coming from somebody from the satellite industry, because I just wonder how do satellite terminals compare to 5G terminals to start with. But beyond that, I think clearly 5G terminals are expensive, although we expect them to reach the $150 threshold at some point this year. But that has been also the case of 4G terminals, 3G terminals before that, and 2G terminals before that. So clearly, the introduction of a new technology means that the equipment is expensive, but the price goes down as the manufacturers develop more terminals, more manufacturers come in. So I think this discussion about affordability, I don't think it is really a good one to have. 5G handsets will become cheap, at least as cheap as 4G terminals are today at some point in the future.
Oh, yes. We stop. Okay. So thank you, Dan, and thank you, my Hans Martin. So thank you so much. Back to you, Dan. You're on mute.
You're on mute, then.
Dan, you're on mute.
Thank you very much. I was just saying thank you, Kezius, thank you, Hans, and I know Ben has been waiting here patiently, so maybe we can give the last very brief words. We are out of time to Ben, just to maybe give a summary, because there's been some excellent discussion. But Ben, maybe just over to yourself for some final words.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan, and thank you for this interesting discussion. I think we are all aiming the same, to connect our population and to connect things. We have just to work together to find a suitable solution to accept new ingredients in bands already used by existing service while protecting these services, and also enable the services to continue to grow up. Thank you very much. That's what I wanted to say. And I invite you also to participate in I2R study groups meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Ben, thank you very much. And once again, Kezius, Hans, thank you both so much for that. And Hans, I know it's pretty late where you are now, so thank you very much for staying with us. You're looking remarkably awake still, given the time that I think it is there. So, so both of you, thank you so much. That was a fascinating discussion. Thank you to all of our panelists and all of our speakers today. Thank you to all of you, particularly those of you who came up and had your say as part of that session, but also to everyone else out there who has been watching today. I know we've had, I think, around about 350 people on the platform today. So really, really good numbers, which is great. And I'm sure that everyone's enjoyed those discussions. There's definitely going to be some few more discussions like that, I'm sure, over the next few years. And there's a lot of discussions to be had there. So really interesting day. Thank you all. Just a few comments about tomorrow. We start again at the same time tomorrow, so 11 o'clock Central African time. The focus we're looking at tomorrow is delivering coverage and connectivity to societies everywhere. So we're going to be looking specifically at connectivity during COVID-19 and how countries have been coping with that. We're also going to be focusing on the UHF band. And we've got a session looking at the work that's being done to move towards the ultimate goal of universal access. So looking at that side of things as well. And then finally, we also have our third and final round of showcase sessions. So another busy day ahead of us tomorrow. So 11 o'clock tomorrow, we'll be back here again for that session. I hope you're all going to be able to join us for that. But in the meantime, Kezius, thank you. Hans, thank you. All of you out there, thank you. Have a good evening, everyone, and see you tomorrow. Thanks very much.
Right.